Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions. Waiting for people to come in. I will entertain myself and anyone who shows up in the side chat and just viewing, not commenting. And thank you to all of you who do any of those things. Please do vote on the video. I appreciate it if you would, because computers and algorithms and stuff. And I'll continue to read from and talk about the idea for idea translation, which you don't find any literal translation anywhere on this planet for whatever reasons I don't understand. Peace and respect to Crypta. And all of the translations that I find, which I find repulsive, and why there are atheists who say, well, this story doesn't make any sense. And they're right, it doesn't. But in an idea for idea translation, it's actually, plausible, comporting with reality, not stretching physics, stuff like that. Peace and respect, Hillary's emails. Oh my gosh, your name has escaped me already. Alex, that was it. Thank you, God. Genesis 2:46. The Jehovah angels said, "Look, mankind has become as one of us, knowing good and evil, and now he need only put forth or forward his hand and take also of the tree of life, as he took of the tree of knowledge of good and evil." I stuck that back in because it's an ellipsis. It belongs there. And eat and live forever. Okay, so if I said to your average Christian, I just blindside them and said, when do we get offered eternal life? They'd say, when we go to heaven. And we all know that. And there's nothing in the overview of the Bible, there's nothing contentious about that. I don't think anybody argues that. I've never heard somebody argue it. You can say, well, it's not true. That's fine. But in an internal critique, it's consistent. So what happens right before we're offered eternal life here? We eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That is, we haven't yet. And that's evidently true. We still bicker over morality worldwide. So we apparently don't have that. So this little note there, this theme of revelation of knowledge and life eternal for us upon induction into the ancient society called heaven is repeated many times throughout the rest of the Bible. See practically everything. Because all of this, Jehovah angels sent mankind forth from this earth to work in the land he was taken from. And I've commented on it before, and it's going to reiterate it again very soon, that man was made not in the garden, put into the garden, just like plants were maintained not yet in the garden to be put in the garden. And it's not until the garden is ready enough that you can put things like plants and then man onto the planet. The description of the garden describing the whole planet. So yeah, to be taken out of the garden is to be taken out of the earth. By the way, there's a Native American culture that puts it exactly that way. And they were taken up out of the earth. So Jehovah drove out mankind. That is, when end times happens, you can't stay here. Read the book of Revelation. A human can't survive all that. You're gonna die. Peace and respect to James Apperson. So yes, the acts of the angels in end times drive man out of the garden. Your choices are die with the planet, go to heaven. That's it. That's all the choices there are. And a flaming sword which turned all directions, that marked the direction of the tree of life. Again, this, I believe, represents the sun. Like there's a flaming sword turning every way. Of course, we know there's only one handle on a sword. It's at one end. If you held a sword and turned it every way, a flaming sword, and say you took like a 5-minute long exposure picture of someone doing that in the dark, you'd literally have a flaming sphere. That is the sun. And it is marking the direction of the tree of life. The tree of life is human genome perfected, we would live forever. That's one of the promises. Actually, not perfected, only freed, we would live forever, just like 30 other species of animals on this planet that already essentially live for. I'm not saying immortal, like they can't be killed. I'm saying eternal, like they don't die of old age. Still, they can be hit by, large propellers on ocean liners, and that kills them. There's a northern Atlantic whale, so there is even an example of a mammal that effectively does not age already on this planet. So then this is the ascension from the earth. That was the earth that was founded peaceful. That is Yaru Shalom, or Jerusalem. That was a virgin with sheaves of wheat, a provider, a feminine provider, the planet itself, the house of bread. The constellation Virgo representing the earth, the house of bread, or Bethlehem. In the English, we say Bethlehem, which literally means Virgo. And she has 12 stars over her head and the moon at her feet. Why? Because it's the planet. Of course, there's 12 different constellations around the planet. We call that the zodiac. And the moon at her feet. That is, the earth is in importance greater than the moon. Okay, and yes, there's a moon here. I think all that's evident. And a flaming sword turning every direction from a single pivot point, which is Sol, the sun. And the interesting thing about that, I said last time I was doing this, but I'll say it again. There is a light signature of every star in existence because it is producing materials in a slightly different way. It is radiating at a slightly different way. Oh, end time teacher, peace and respect. Okay. Thank you for your comments. So what I'm saying is that our sun literally in all of the universe marks where we are. And if you had previously recorded the light spectrum this star is creating, and then you scanned the universe for that, you'd have an exact location of exactly where you and I are right now, from anywhere in the universe, actually. Genesis 4. The saints explain dualism. And dualism meaning that you're not a simple animal that only experiences material things, but you have, although there's physical material manifestation of your emotions in your brain and electrochemical signals, but there is the experience of that electrochemical signal, which that experience is, well, it's individually you know, that kind of dualism. Not that I think there is a spirit existent of a dead thing. I don't think so. When you're dead, you're dead. Your brain stops working. Those electromagnetic, whatever, electrochemical signals, they stop. End Times Teacher, there's a link in the top of the side chat if you wanted to come in and have a reasonable conversation. I would be totally up for that. There you are. Okay, let me put on my, or there somebody is, I can't tell because I'm on a different screen. Let me put on my earphones so we don't have echo, and we will go to whoever is backstage. BS, if you are indeed BS, would you please hold up 4 fingers on your left hand on camera? Feel free to shut your camera back off. I just want to make sure that you're live and not a recording. Okay, got left hand. Got 4 fingers pointing down, close enough. You couldn't have got film footage of that. All right, man, the floor is yours.
Peace and respect.
Peace and respect to you, BS.
I think this is the first time we've talked.
To my memory, you're correct. Of course, I could be wrong, and I'm hoping you're right.
I am intrigued with your epistemological breakdown of the Bible. Before I left the faith, I had quite a similar usage of symbolism, numerology, word name meanings, substitutionary meanings, and stuff like that.
Right.
And
Sure.
I've asked you on chat, um, would you be able to pop into the beginning of Proverbs?
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna have to. I haven't gotten that far in this translation, but of course I would bring that up for you.
Yeah, I think it's the very first couple verses, but it tells that Proverbs is written specifically as kind of a compass or a key for this type of interpretations that we both engaged in.
Do you care about the translation? Because personally, I don't. They're all
Um,
translations.
no, I got to the point where I used all the translations more as a palette of art rather than I didn't really care too much about original languages or anything.
I searched the word Proverbs, and it came up at Numbers 21. But I guess you mean for me to go to Proverbs proper, Proverbs 1:1, yes?
The book of Proverbs.
Okay, great. All right, let me get to share this so everyone can see what you're talking about. And I have a cold. You'll forgive me if I cough and sneeze and choke and everything else. Sorry.
No, I can't forgive you for that, Richard. Sorry.
Well, then you'll don't forgive me. Just don't forgive me. Then it's okay if you don't forgive me. Just live with it.
No, it's okay. So right off the bat, verse 2, it starts talking about how this is a kind of guide, like to study this book is a guide to understand parables. And I think verse 6 is where it really just says it flat out plainly. It's for the understanding of proverbs and parables, sayings and riddles of the wise.
Right, right. And to read it directly, to understand a proverb and the interpretation thereof, the words of the wise and their dark sayings, the fear of the Lord, the beginning of knowledge. People love to quote that and then out of context. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Yeah, so there you go. So it's literally saying that these things are proverbs and to be interpreted, and that requires wisdom. And what wisdom does it require? It requires the Lord's wisdom, and the beginning of that wisdom is knowledge, and that comes from God, is the claim, I think. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So the first time I ever heard of you was that time you popped in on Doug's. I didn't know who you were, but I was
Which
very Pine Creek.
Okay.
I was very intrigued because you were going over the Revelations, waters equals peoples, and then you just broadly throw it across the whole book.
Yep.
And my thing I brought up in a chat to you at some channel was that, yes, you can do this, and I get hung up on the word wine, because the way that you break down the epistemology is Revelations is quite clearly saying, let's substitute the word waters for peoples when it pops up. And you do that, and I did that.
Yeah, it does. It directly says it. You're right.
But it also says that with the word wine is a mocker, which if you're a standard Christian, you can get into some hot water when it comes to the Last Supper and the different usages of the word wine. From water to wine, he's turning, like, if we were going to use that substitutionary method, the miracle of Jesus turning water to wine is to make all of the people into mockers.
Right, it would be, but there's a difference between the word waters, which is over pluralized unnecessarily, and the word water, meaning H2O. Also salt water, meaning seas. And it never refers to us as salt water or water. But if you try to change the word waters over pluralized in that language, which would not be an accident. It would be like me saying, accidentally saying dads when I'm talking about one guy. It just would be completely unnatural to put an S there. But I looked it up. It's really there. So
could we just switch it to the singular for peoples then? So all the people at the party who partook of the wine became mockers instead of all the people on planet Earth or whatever.
No, well, it's really interesting what we do when we get drunk, and there's definitions in the text that use the word wine and wine bibber that way, saying that when we get drunk, and you know this is true in your own experience on average, not every case, but on average, people will adopt one of two attitudes when they're drunk. They're either ready to kick your ass or they're ready to hug you. And there seems to be almost nothing in between, really, if someone's good and drunk.
That's
So
that's what the next one says, is that beer is a brawler, and so it makes that
Right.
connotation. But I would also throw in sleepy, because drinking makes me sleepy.
Eventually, yeah,
It
they
makes me
get.
sleepy.
You're right. They get sleepy. Yeah. Okay. So that's talking about people who are like hot-headed and combative against the ideas in the Bible, and those who are open-minded and accepting, sometimes too accepting, of some church doctrine or something like that. So when it talks about us drinking, then I think that's the context. When it talks about the water into wine, I think that's a one-off. I think that's the only time that this is used, and critique this for me and tell me why I'm stupid. Water.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you're already ready? I didn't even make a statement. Wait till
I
wait
thought
till
you
I
said
make the
critique what
statement,
you just
then
said.
tell me. No,
Okay.
tell me why I'm stupid after the statement, not before it. I mean, if you can tell me ahead of time and you're good at prayer, that's awesome. Go ahead and tell me. But the idea, I think, and that's a one-off, is this: that water is colorless, flavorless, necessary to life, right? In the kinds of life we know. But it's also impotent in a certain way. Whereas wine is colorful, pungent, intoxicating. It's not necessary. It's luxurious, and we have these kinds of reactions to being all soused up, right? So peace and respect, Krish. So I think what that's talking about is the same as the loaves, where Jesus takes something that's not nearly enough. It wouldn't do for like anybody really, and like increases it and makes it luxurious and intoxicating. And I think that is talking about the same thing he's talking about the whole time, which is, you have heard but I say, you have heard but I tell you. That it's about correcting, and what's it that he's correcting? I believe that he is the lamb that removes the 7 seals. And what's being spoken of is the effectiveness of the Bible itself. That it was water, and in his first miracle, which is why it has to be the first one, he makes the water into wine. Now we can fight over it.
I won't specifically fight, because wine's a constantly reoccurring imagery in the New Testament. So
Yes.
I could go there, but I could say, we could talk about the Last Supper, how Jesus says his blood, or the wine represents his blood.
Sure.
And John 6 stuff about drinking his blood is the only way to achieve the eternal life. And
Yeah.
so if the wine is a mocker, his blood is the mockery, and everybody he gets to partake of the mockery inherits eternal life.
Somewhat, yes. But if in your mockery you go to the extreme of being overly, not skeptical, but cynical. Skeptical is fine. But if someone goes into cynicism, they have gone too far. And also, if someone is too lovey-dovey and accepts things too easily, they've gone too far the other way. So, yes, all of that, and what we see in our own actual experience. Peace and respect to Willie Ignorant.
It struck me as odd, because I used the same type of methodology that you would do, and in my last supper, or not last supper, my last communion I ever took at church, I actually was on the cusp of a mental breakdown, and I thought that I was literally drinking the cup of demons with the congregation, as Paul.
I'm glad you're better now.
I'm recognizing what the issue is, but
yeah,
the methodologies that you use and you employ in how you get to your conclusion, all I can say is I've used similar things and come to very widely different conclusions. I have studied original languages, the original words. I am keen on this. I don't know why you would make a separation between the plural waters and the singular water, because water in itself has no division except for the divisions that we make of it. It is fluid, like hydrogen bonds and all this stuff. Like there is no separation of the waters except for the separations that we put in place, or that, because you're a theist, you say God puts in place, like land and mountains and stuff.
I don't really say God puts in place exactly that same way, but yeah, fair enough, close enough.
Yeah,
terraforming, yeah.
Yeah, because he constructed mountains like the SimCity game and stuff like that.
Yeah, I just don't think it's done by magic, yeah.
Yeah, but if we're going deep into the weeds and symbology, because this is kind of my jam, I'm pretty artistic on this stuff.
Sweet.
There's also, I can't remember where it is in Revelation. I know you're kind of more expert. I kind of, it's been a while since I've been in, but
I'm
there's
pretty crazy about it. You're right.
I was for a time, but I've been out of it, so I've lost
Let me go
memories.
back to something you already said before you move on to the book of Revelation, and I'll say the book of Revelation again if that's good enough to cue you. Is that going to be good enough later?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so you asked me a question, how do I know that this is the best way to read it? And you've done this before and came to very different conclusions, right? And I agree, you could come to a lot of views even doing all the work I'm doing, okay? But I don't think you can come to a consistent view that works for everything. I don't think you could do that except for one way.
The way you're doing it.
The way that, yeah, well, of course I think that I'm doing it right, and that's very biased, but I don't see another way to do it and it be consistent within itself. And I think if something isn't consistent within itself, then it can't have value, or it could have all these different meanings like you're saying. I mean, I agree with you. People do and can do that, even with all this research.
Well, that's why I'm bringing up the wine issue, because
Sure.
the consistency of the epistemology of using the waters for nations, I employed that same consistent strategy for
Right.
not just wine. That's just one that really troubled me. But we talked about thorns being representative of stuff. Oil is representative of stuff in the Bible. Like
Sure.
we can do a lot of imagery substitution and come up with and some of them play out if you play the consistent theme throughout the Bible. The thorn one was beautiful, and that's kind of what turned me on to this style of interpretation, is that the thorns were representative of troubles. And so when
Right.
God cursed the earth, thorns came up, so troubles came up. But then Jesus puts the thorn of crowns on his head, so he takes the cares of the world and puts it on his head. And then also Paul's thorn in the
side,
flesh. Yeah. And that's where we
Yeah.
get the one-to-one, is he actually says what the thorn is, which gives you the key to substitute it in other places.
Right. And in that same style, if you're going to take Paul's definition of what thorn means and consistently apply it, and it works everywhere, and I'm doing that with the word waters versus the word water, which in the text, water is something that you can nourish a camel with. But you'll never find waters nourishing a camel or watering plants with it. You'll never find, and they took waters out of the well and watered a plant. It's not going to happen.
And again, that's kind of, if we're going to split hairs, it's hard for me to pluralize water in general because it's so
weird
fluid.
in the first place.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like I have two waters. It's like, that's no, you have one water, like two glasses of water, or two lakes, which are just big glasses of water.
Right.
But water
It's actually
itself,
a very recent development that we say, oh, this body of water and this other body of water, like two Great Lakes, are waters. That is not traditional way to use that word. It's over pluralized. It's unnecessary. But I think that became popularized because of our Christian traditional thinking.
yeah. But even if I wanted to go symbolic representation on the word waters and it being such a plural thing, you could make beautiful analogies out of that. Like this is kind of where you say we're all human, and so
Sure.
we're all one water. There's divisions, but plurality of the fluidity of humanity is still within all of us.
Yeah, let me go back to Genesis to confirm the definition of waters over pluralized versus water. When you go back to Genesis and it says the waters are divided from the waters, that part, that idea,
Mm-hmm.
it distinctly says, in the King James, again, not a great translation. If I dig back into the original ideas, it's a little bit different than the King James, and that tiny difference is significant. Here's what I mean. It says there's a firmament above, and the waters are throughout the firmament, meaning contained by the firmament. And then it says there's a firmament below, and the waters are on top of the firmament. So that's like container above filled, container below covered.
Okay.
So if I say that waters means living beings who have a spirit, something like that, Then I have the angels in heaven differentiated from the people, mankind on the earth.
But are they plural, like water is fluid?
Well, it is overly pluralized. It uses waters in all of those phrases, waters.
I mean, in your opinion, are we of the same substance?
Yeah, it even says so, I think, in no uncertain terms, that we are made a little lower than angels, that we are made of the same pulverized material. That word dust right there is the wrong idea. It means anything so small that you can't see a single part of it. It's too small for your eyes to distinguish. Like you would need some kind of microscope to distinguish between the parts. So it can be translated as sand or salt or dust or ash or anything pulverized. But generally it means pulverized material. Okay, that's the strict definition. And when it says that we're made to be lower than angels, then the standard is angel. We're reduced from that, and we see where that we see that there's parts of us that are restricted. We know that, like you and I age, which is not a necessity of an organic being, that it ages. It's not necessary.
Okay. I've heard that you take in considerance other texts besides the Bible. I know you said Quran. I've heard that, but like, would you consider Enoch valuable?
Yeah, in fact, Enoch was what first turned me on as an atheist. That there's two claims in Enoch that are true, and if the person was, or the idea, I don't even care about the person, doesn't matter. But if the ideas were written down in that part of the earth, and we date back that book to the age, or even close, within like 500 years, which is ridiculous. We can do better than that. Of when it was claimed to have been first written down, there's no way those two claims could be there. And when you look into those claims, they are true in reality. So it's knowledge that a person in Ethiopia could not have had. Literally could not. And that kind of turned me on. I went, what the hell? Well, how's this here? And that's what got me started.
That is interesting. So you're aware of the pact Azazel made with the other angels to disobey God?
Yeah, the 200 fallen, yeah. Mm-hmm. A third of his crew, which means he had a crew of 600, and 2/3 of them said, no way, dude.
So when I would read this and do the interpretive dance with it, I came to the conclusion that Jesus was actually the bad guy against God.
Interesting.
The wine symbolizing mockery was, and at the Last Supper was him with his fallen crew making a pact that echoed the pact made by Azazel and his chiefs to overcome or to disobey God. I don't think in that story they're actually trying to overthrow him. It's not like a Babel story.
I think they're trying to do their own thing. They're not really trying to overthrow. They're trying to like repeat the process in a personalized way that they have claim to. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it was just let's go bang some women, kind of. So that's the layman's version.
Yeah.
But he said no, don't do that. And so I made the connection because of the mockery and the wine and so much wine symbology throughout the whole Old New Testament, the Gospels. That's what they had intended on doing. And if I'm gonna trace it and say it makes sense, like I come today and I'm like, everybody worships Jesus as God. Like if he was intending to do something that maybe over my head, because I know you're not supernatural, but I was at the time. So I took a lot of stock in Kabbalah. I did studying of Christian mysticism, and different things like that. And so I thought that maybe they were doing something that the layman doesn't really understand when it comes to magical type stuff, but they pulled it off because he's 2,000 years later being worshipped as God, and his apostles have the authority over every Christian in the world.
Okay, so I want to put it to the test, of course, because all things should be tested, but I also want to be, gracious and extend as much as I can toward the idea before we start flushing it out. So let me say something like, Jesus is a pretty big deal to a lot of folks on this planet, but certainly not the majority. We can agree on that?
No, but a good chunk of the Abrahamic followers.
Sure. Okay, cool. And the text of the Christian says that, reads that, I hate when people says that a book said something, and I did it myself. It reads that, because books never talk. I've never heard one do it. It reads that the forces of evil are in charge of this earth right now. So those two ideas kind of work pretty good together, actually. So, is there anything that you know of from within the text that is argumentative to your case that Christ is the wrong thing to worship according to the Bible?
First, the minor one is he says, "The Lord of the world cometh," and so he knows by whatever he's about to do, the Lord of the world, which gets later identified as Satan, is coming. And it's weird. I don't understand it completely because Satan is and was. He wanders to and fro. I don't really know. It's different between Jewish and Christian belief, but I tell a lot about the typology of the bronze serpent, the Nakash, and in the garden, the shiny brazen serpent.
Yeah.
They went with serpent because the only vowels that make it a noun for Nakash is serpent, not shiny or brazen. Right. And so. But it also shows up in the story of Moses, where the people are complaining, and then they get struck in the mouth with a bunch of Nakashas. Jesus, or then the pole with the serpent, the idol of the bronze serpent, Nehushtan, is raised. Nehushtan is in Jewish circles, is a very common saying with him that says when salvation becomes a snare. It's not a hidden saying. It's pretty popular amongst rabbis. And then later on, the bronze serpent shows up in Hezekiah's story, where all of the Jewish people start worshiping the idol Nehushtan as a god. And Hezekiah, who's called the best king that Israel ever had, demonstrates this by smashing the idol to bits. And so this could be totally directly correlated to like the Trinity belief, where a lot of people, Unitarians don't have to worry about this analogy, but Trinitarians would have to worry about it, because if they're worshiping Jesus as God, then he could be, and he even says it himself, he is a typological fulfillment of the bronze serpent. He just is referring to the Moses story, and most Christians never follow the story to the end. They just stop there and say, "Oh, you're thinking too much about it, BS," or
You're not thinking too much. There's no such thing as thinking too much. There's such thing as thinking poorly, but not too much.
Yeah, but if it's a typology that has a beginning and an end with the Nakash / Nehushtan idolatry, and then it would say to me that the Christian today, the Trinitarian, would have to smash Jesus as an idol in his life to be a pleasing king or something to Jesus, or to God the Father, or God the big God, or whatever.
Wow. Okay, so that was a lot. Peace and respect, Midnight.
Hello.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
Here's some sampling of Richard Brain for you, BS. It strikes me that we use that same symbol for medicine today, and since I think it's only talking about the end of the earth, then I think that there is an over-respect for medicine and the science of medicine. And I think that that's evident in our reality, because how many times has a drug come out and Pfizer got sued in 10 years? So it's like we overly trust it, and we just take whatever Pfizer makes. Not that I'm picking on Pfizer in particular, it's just a name that comes to the front of my mind. So there's this over trust in it, and that's not the ultimate solution. But what's being claimed of the heavenlies is that they know the human body so perfectly that our medicine is a bad joke. In fact, they know science so well that our retarded, ancient, barely working science to them is a joke. Of course, if you could terraform a planet, you're like at least a Kardashev Class 3 civilization. So if they terraformed the planet, the rest of the claims make sense. What do you think of that?
How do you feel about Greek and Roman mythology? Is that something that you include into your worldview as well, or is that not so much? You do? Okay,
Now,
so
I can't say I've thoroughly studied all of it, but the parts I have work quite well.
there's a beautiful stuff in the Greek mythologies, and
Yes.
they've stuck around just as long as Jewish stuff has in our modern culture. And one of the things that it has stuck around is that medical symbols actually for Asclepius. He is a healer in the Greek culture who is symbolized with a snake on a rod. He's associated with the god Hermes, which is the god of knowledge.
Right.
And that's mainly where we kind of get it. But there's also a very subtle difference. If you notice that the medical sign with the snakes and the pole, there's a difference between two snakes and one snake, symbologically speaking. And most of the times we'll see the two snakes, but the Nehushtan is always categorized as a single snake.
Right on. Right on. And I'm sure you had a larger point to saying that I'm probably missing. I can't put them together.
That you might be jumping the gun a little bit on putting Nehushtan into the medical industry. When it could be, but there's also, because America is a melting pot, the Western's a melting pot. We're getting stuff from the Jewish culture.
Everywhere.
We're getting stuff from the Greek. Like, we still use the term narcissist. That's Jewish, or that's Greek. Yep. That's for narcissist.
Narcissus. Yeah.
Yeah. We still use echo, which is the Greek there. We still use the Oedipus complex, which is from Greek mythology. There's a lot of stuff that the Greek culture mythologically has passed on to our modern culture.
And from the Jews, we get expressions like "he is an ass." And we do.
I know.
That comes from from the Jews. That it turns out, you are using the likeness of an ass today. So it started out as the man has a jawbone of an ass. That is, he speaks without knowledge, just like in Job. He speaks without knowledge, and he's thought of as a fool, but he never says a thing that is wrong. So to speak to slay those with the jawbone of an ass is to tell them things they don't believe and they think are foolish that turns out to be true later.
Well, okay, something that isn't false isn't necessarily usefully true, though.
Yeah, but I was talking to him, not you, and now that I'm talking to you, I'll totally agree that you're right, and I was being loose in my language.
Oh, well, sorry. Move on.
I know you. I'm aware that you're two different humans right there. I'm pretty sure. Okay.
Well, I'm three humans in a trench coat. Wait, I'm more than Matesty. I don't know, but Richard, I don't know. I don't know if you've ever been accused of this, but I've always been accused of overthinking. Oh, Midnight, you're overthinking. I'm sorry if I'm analyzing a subject more than you are.
Actually, that's what Einstein claimed. He said he wasn't smarter than everyone else. He'd put more time on anything. So congratulations, I guess.
Well, no. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that I've had discussions with a few people who about certain aspects of reality, like friendship or whatever, and they always said, Midnight, you're overthinking this. It's simple. Like, no, it fucking isn't.
I don't actually know of a simple
thing. You're overthinking it. Well, they had simple minds. What can I say?
No, that's fine for them. That's absolutely fine for them, and I hope that you accept them as they are and you love them through whatever situation they're in.
I try to, but one of them said I was clinically insane. Just for my view, I was like, okay, I guess I don't need to talk to you anymore.
Well, you and I are in a club of two right there, because I've heard that so many times it's not worth mentioning.
Hey, Cryptic.
But the better question is what you're saying making you aligned to the actuality and giving you more possibility to be well adjusted and happy? And if it's working better than theirs, are you the crazy one?
I would say yes, I'm still the crazy one, but
you're still the crazy one. I'm sorry. I got nothing for you. That was
the crazy one or a crazy one?
Yes, the crazy one.
Crazy one, probably a.
Yeah.
Wait,
I think Midnight was saying yes to a crazy. Yeah, but you can. Two people can. You can still have. I mean, so I don't like to use the term crazy,
Right.
but I do occasionally. You know, everybody has flaws. Um, you, Even in a conversation with two people, there's not necessarily the unreasonable one or the irrational one. You can both be rational. You can both be irrational.
Yes. I'm sure I hold false beliefs right now, and I'm sure that I hold true beliefs right now. And some of the best evidence I have that I hold true beliefs is I'm not dead. And if I held enough
Yeah.
false beliefs, I'd be dead.
Indeed. I had this reminds me of I had so in college my first roommate freshman year was a mathematical savant. Hey Beck, a mathematical savant who was extremely good at mathematics, but had substantial social limitations.
Right.
And more than typical, he also had a neurological condition where he was unable, and I believe still is, unable to recognize faces by and
Oh,
large.
wow.
He
Yeah.
could recognize his mom's face, but after living with him for over 10 weeks, he could not recognize me by looking at me if I weren't wearing a very
A
colorful,
certain.
unique hat that I owned
Yeah.
and which I wore all the time.
You have to
And
wear that same. Yeah, that's cropping up in our genome right now.
yeah, and I remember talking to friends of mine, and I was like, I don't know how he gets around. Like I don't know how he finds the cafeteria to like eat. And my friend pointed out very astutely, if he was unable to acquire food, he would be dead.
True story. True story.
Right?
Yeah, it becomes an odd thing when you interact in public if you're unable to recognize faces and people just change their clothes and they're a totally different human. That's really inconvenient, but the locations and the meanings of the locations, trash can's still trash can.
Well, let's be honest here. If if I maybe maybe this is just a limiting belief of mine, but I honestly think I couldn't survive out there if if the apocalypse came and and everybody was out everybody was out for themselves. I don't know. I feel like I couldn't survive because I don't really have any survival skills, right? Like,
You could change that. I recommend starting with you're going to think I'm kidding, but I'm not. This is really good and it's straightforward and it's factual and it works. Go buy the Eagle Scouts manual. And I'm not kidding you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. I was not an Eagle Scout.
I didn't think you were kidding. You were go ahead, sorry.
I was in Boy Scouts. I left when I was a first class, so 2 more ranks I think until Eagle. But the two real harder ones, life is hard, and then Eagle is 10 times harder than getting life. So, but yeah, you learn a lot of skills in the Scouts. I will say that, like knot making and fire making, and knife safety and weapon safety are gonna get you a long way in a situation where society is collapsing.
Yep. I recommend it to everybody, really.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's relatively good evidence. I think I can build a pretty good cumulative case that the governments of the North Americas are preparing for a natural disaster that's going to be quite serious. And if you're an American or a Southern Canadian or even all the way down to like most of Mexico, I really recommend that you get your brain learned on these things. Really. Does anyone have any comments about what BS was speaking of? In that I could still be inconsistent using the methodology that I am looking into the original words and ideas in an idea for idea translation. I could still be very wrong. Any comments on that?
I'll bring up something. Can you get Revelation 6:6 up?
I would. Give me just a moment.
I need to get something other than the NIV here.
Well, I don't recommend the NIV at all.
This is my point.
It's a really handy index card. It is. It's an index card. It's all it's good for. You said 6:6, yes?
Yeah, it's the third seal.
Okay, hold on a second.
So in the NIV, it's, then I heard what sounded like a voice among the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a day's wages, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine."
Let's talk about it.
So let me ask you first, Richard. What is your interpretation as a substitution interpretation of oil?
I think that oil and wine don't mix, and wine is of the greater value, although oil has value as well. And the wine is talking about the people drunken with the idea of heaven, that is the open-minded who have accepted. And the oil is talking about those who don't mix with that, or those who have not accepted, and they are, for that time, of a lesser value to heaven.
So if I was going to go to the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 that are looking for oil for their lamp and 5 that are lacking, or that have it and 5 that are lacking it, what does the oil represent in that situation?
Same. It's the same. It's alignment. It's readiness. It's acceptance.
But that doesn't make sense to me, because you're saying that oil represents something that doesn't mix with wine, but you haven't given me an actual substitution, verb for verb or noun for noun, what it actually represents.
Okay, well, first of all, I think those late for the wedding have missed the first ascension. Now they're in the second half of end times. Does that follow so far?
Okay.
And which means that it's all about oil at that point. And some have no oil, meaning they're not ready at all. And some, at least though they're not accepting of it, they can come to accept. They're not completely rejecting it. I think that's what that's talking about right there, but maybe there's a flaw in it. What do you see?
So you're taking it as a literal oil in that one?
No.
The oil is not literal? What does the oil actually stand for?
I think it's talking about the attitude of the person, just like it is here.
So, but them not being prepared or being prepared... Okay, can you be more specific? Like, is it a happy attitude, an optimistic attitude, a pessimistic attitude, a cynical, a not cynical? Like, what kind of attitude?
Okay, you could go with cynical, not cynical, yeah.
So the people who do have oil in their lamps are not cynical, and the people who are...
Right.
And the people
not as cynical as those without.
And so the people who do have oil are not cynical, or the people who don't have oil are cynical, but they're looking to the people who do have the oil to get some uncynicalness from them.
Right, that makes sense, because like if heaven were literally in the atmosphere, I mean spaceships in our atmosphere, and that was very confusing and upsetting, and some certain amount of the population, I would think 15, 20%, would reject heaven completely and be there for that time. Well, they are now late for the wedding, the wedding of Christ to the people, that wedding, and the feast, all those kinds of expressions. And then you have some that are apparently not too cynical, and they kind of lend some oil to those who have no oil, or the people who have no oil would turn to them. And that's talking about us testifying to each other and talking about what we believe is true. Of course, ultimately, there is the story of those who were in heaven and come back to the earth, the 144,000 and the 12 teachers, who have their experience in heaven, then return and follow the Lamb wherever he should go. So those guys are like intermixing together, where you have, all three groups in a very dynamic social situation right there.
So in the Revelation passage, if we're using it across the board, then he would be saying, preserve the uncynicalness and the mockery.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That is, don't kill them just because they're assholes.
Okay.
Because this is talking to the angels who destroy the planet. if you scroll up a little bit here, who's it talking to? And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld a little black horse, and he that sat on a pair of balances in his hand. I heard a voice in the midst of the four angels say, "This is instructions. A measure of wheat for a penny." This is like fairness, right? It's like saying, because back in the day, this was fair. A day's wages would buy you blah, 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 right? And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine, right? So there's the valuable and the less valuable, but you're to hurt nothing of them in fairness. So it's instructions for those conducting the situation, which would be the angels.
Now, if I found a verse in the Bible that said oil is something else, would that
Sure
supersede whatever your current understanding of oil representing to be?
We'll have to find out. I don't know.
There's a couple. There's Proverbs 5:3. It says, "For the lips of the adulterous woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil." It's not an exact one for one.
Smoother than oil.
But if I was to put oil for non-cynicalness, that doesn't make as much sense to me. But then there's also, where I just found it, the Psalm 141:5. "Let a righteous man strike me, that is a kindness. Let him rebuke me, that is oil on my head." So in this one, it is giving an is thing, and it's saying that rebuke is oil.
I think anointing and rebuke is oil.
But in your,
I don't think
your previous version, you said oil represents non-cynicalness.
Yes, oil is not cynical. It's not too compliant. It's not too easy. It's not like drunkenness. But it's being, I call it skepticism instead of cynicism. If we could say no oil equals cynicism, oil equals skepticism, and wine equals too darn compliant in those usages.
But then we're not using a one-to-one across the whole Bible. So it clearly says wine is a mocker.
I don't think we aren't.
Wine is a mocker in Proverbs, and that's so I stuck with that. Like waters is the people.
Let's go look it up, the one you're exactly talking about, because you've referred to it 3 times and we haven't looked into it. Wine is a mocker. Is that a King James verbiage?
I think it shows up in all of them, as far as I'm aware.
Are you sure it's not mockery or mockers or anything? It's mocker? Because it won't come up unless I get the spelling right.
I'll pull it up. I'm looking at it.
Here, it came up. Proverbs 21. It came up.
Yep.
Okay, wine a mocker. They interjected the word is there. Strong drink raging. And whosoever is deceiving thereby is not wise. So if you're deceiving by rage or mockery, then you are not wise. So it's talking about wine making people not wise in their mockery and raging. And let me look up the word mocker to make sure that's a good, solid idea.
But would you then think that Jesus using wine as his symbolic drink of his blood, which you need to drink in order to inherit eternal life, it's a trap? He's saying, don't be. In Proverbs it says, "Don't be led astray by that."
Okay, so the word mocker here means to make mouths at. Okay? And the way that they see that, as far as they know the Hebrew culture, is to scoff, right? From the effort to pronounce a foreign language. That's interesting. To interpret. To intercede, to be an ambassador, to have in derision, etc., etc., etc. So I don't think mock is precisely the right idea here, as much as to speak and explain. In fact, I think I could use this to talk about apologists more than anything else. I wonder what happens if I put the word apologist where that word mocker there is.
But you could agree that, like, we're both using rational means to come to our thing. Like, when people get on you about your interpretation and how you're ludicrous, I don't necessarily think that. I think you're artistic, with an R, artistic. And that is a beautiful thing, because I do appreciate the arts. But art is highly subjective.
It is. It is, and this is why I talk so much about consistency. And you brought up a really good point today. And it may be that I can't make wine and oil work the same in all of the text. I may not be able to. And perhaps that's a point of contention for me that I'm going to have to reconsider, because you make a great point. You do.
Yeah. Because it won't work for everything. I agree with the waters. I agree with the thorn. Like, there's some good, beautiful stuff to get, and some. But Proverbs specifically at the beginning, and that's why we started with it, tells you that book itself is a guide for interpreting parables and proverbs.
Yes.
While being a parable and a proverb itself. But that's why, because you're actually digging into it.
Well, these are some of the reasons why I say that there's an intended reader. And that intended reader would make sense of this and would be able to make sense of this. But everybody else, if it's not intended for them, it's like, geez, chill out and don't worry so much. So, I don't have a huge problem with me not being able to understand the ways that wine is being used, or if it is consistent, how to look at it. I actually don't have a problem with not understanding that right now. It's fine.
No, and I had that same belief on my way out. I thought Revelations was specifically written for one or a small group of people, and no one that's why all the confusion is about, because it's just like you said. But I believed in prophecy at the time. This is where I get confused, because you're not supernaturally based, and so it's like my reasoning behind that was prophetic words. So the words were encoded until the time of the person who was needed to read it read it. But I don't know how that works on a naturalistic worldview.
I don't see why it wouldn't work any more than if you say to your 8-year-old son, you can deadlift 300 pounds. And he's like, no one can lift up 300 pounds. That's insane. And he understands the idea of it, but he doesn't understand how strong you are compared to him. So you take him to the gym and you lift the 300. Well, the prophecy was fulfilled by your ability.
But who wrote the prophecy?
The people who fulfill the prophecy.
So it's circular time.
Well, it's just that they can do what they say. It's a tautology, but if they can do it and then they do it, then it would be done. Now, all they said is, we can do the following. That's all they're saying.
When do you believe Revelation was written?
The actual history is probably pretty close on, within a couple hundred years or whatever.
Within the first, early second century?
Yeah, I got no problem with that.
So, is John that person? Or, I mean, the author of Revelation, we'll just say John, but is he that person?
What person?
Who's giving the hidden code in Revelation to the future?
Okay, here's the way I see it. This is kind of a weird idea. The reason that the Bible can say both, you have killed my prophets and I sent no prophet, is because when it says, I do send a prophet, it's talking about a speaking prophet. And the rest of the prophets are literal writings. That the reason that the prophet Joshua is the book is because the book is the prophet Joshua, which is why it's written that way. He's literally a book.
So do you think us and our striving for AI has some part in this? Because that's what it sounds like you're kind of getting at. Like, we're actually constructing God.
We're constructing God. No, I think God is a necessity of what the human animal is. We are the God maker in that we exist and we need that.
Because if you follow a circular timeline like the Hindus have, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be illogical or impossible to think that we started in an infinite loop, but AI, an advanced AI of our own creation, created us and then died. And then our job as humanity is to reconstruct this AI so it reverses the heat death of the universe.
Gosh, okay, first of all, the idea of the heat death of the universe being something we have to prevent in order that we keep on and everything else keep on. we have the knowable universe, and then we have the universe, and those two very different things. And because we can only know what we do know, and we can't know what we don't know how big the universe is. So let's be generous and say the knowable universe makes up 50% of the total universe. And let's say that 50% is expanding. And, the microwave background rate, everything else we see, grant all of it. Is 50% a good sample of the universe?
Okay.
Well, it's not. Even if it was half of it, it would still crap.
Oh, you said be charitable, so I was being charitable.
Well, I'm being charitable by saying 50% when we don't know. It could be 1/20,000,000th of the universe is what we can say. We don't know.
Such questions are stupid. You don't know what you don't know. So,
Right.
apologists would use that dot in a circle analogy to prove God, and I just thought that was the stupidest thing ever.
That's a bad argument. It doesn't prove anything. It just proves that we have ignorance, which we know, which is fine. I'm not saying that. But when we assert things, when we make positive claims based on a sample size of I don't know how much of a sample I have, that's a bad assertion. It's the same as the 7 blind men who touched the elephant. And one says the elephant touching his tail. The elephant's very much like a snake. Well, how the hell do you know that? You see? So when our science says the universe is expanding and eventually that's going to result in a heat death, I'm like, okay, what percentage of the universe, the actual universe, are you basing that in? What's your percentage? We have no idea. Well, then I don't know what you mean.
We're just going off the mathematical formulations for entropy. And so, it's going to be hard for you to fight against entropy as a thing.
Not really.
It's been pretty demonstrated.
Not really, and here's why. The cosmic web is literally photographs of energy transferring, and that energy is, I'm serious, jumping millions of light years in some places. Now, if you get something to arc on this planet about this far, that's going to take 30,000 volts. That's what it's going to take to arc this far, right? If you arc millions of light years, how much juice is there? I don't know, but it's a lot. It's a lot. Now, we know that energy transfer in space in the cosmic web, which is something we have a picture of, we know it exists. We know that energy transfers like that can both explode things and pull things together depending on how much juice and material is there. If there's not enough material and too much juice, it'll blow it up. If it's spread out and it collects enough that it can handle the transfer of juice through it, then it'll glow. It's a light bulb, right? Mm-hmm. So we know that energy transfer, and if it blows something else, it'll change path. It'll go to the next nearest thing, right? So because energy is always taking the shortest path, collecting and destroying, then what I think is the most likely answer on a cosmic level is constant destruction and reconstruction, and we are seeing a pocket of deconstruction, which is not indicative of everything always gets destroyed.
I actually don't push back against that model. That's what the Hindus propose in a 8 billion whatever cycle.
Euro, yeah.
And so they would compare it artistically to the tides go in, tides go out. Breath comes in, breath comes out. The Big Bang is an exhalation, but that doesn't mean we can rule out an inhalation.
Right. You can't rule that out. Yeah.
Because we are just in such a small window, we can't actually see it. We wouldn't know the actual naturalistic cause of the trigger that causes the inhalation, so to say.
You obviously glean my point, yeah.
Yeah, and actually that's the model I was kind of working off of. And then when I said the AI thing, is that you think that maybe there's an unknown trigger, a naturalistic trigger that causes that inhalation, but that is not the only option. It could be a AI of man's construction.
See, but then I have to ask how the man constructed an AI. And where the man... I mean, eventually I think I have to go back to an abiogenesis happening somewhere.
We've been doing it for the whole eternal cycle, over and over and over and over. I
believe so.
There is no beginning. The Hindus don't ever posit a beginning. They posit an eternal cycle, which saves the first law of thermodynamics, that it's not created or destroyed. It's just always there. It just transfers from inhalation to exhalation.
That's what I think. Yeah. It's constant reorganization. It's never a beginning and there'll be no end. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Of course, it's real hard to show, but what the hell?
What we're getting into is sci-fi fiction writing, essentially. But that's why I'm digging on it, because that's where I got the idea from. As I read a sci-fi story about that, where the whole push within man, the survival instinct, evolutionarily speaking, does have a ultimate purpose, and it's to save all of existence. And they do so through their own ingenuity by creating their own god. But then their god is what saves them after they create it, and then it kind of just goes in a flip-flop back and forth between the two.
It's an interesting notion. I have no idea. I mean, I'm more than willing to experiment as long as I start the idea with I'm experimenting, and I don't know these things. Yeah.
That's why I posit it as science fiction, not I know this for a fact,
Right. I'm just agreeing with you.
But I would say, I do appreciate you willing to bend and concede a little bit on my very strict rules for interpretation and substitution. I
think it's good to have strict rules, and I think without them you can make... I half tongue-in-cheek give the example to people, is Moby Dick about an albino whale and a fisherman, or is it about obsession ruining your life? Well, there's two ways to look at that, but I think the more adult view of it and the intention of the writer is to talk about obsession ruining people's lives, not talking about an anomalous sea creature,
Well, you have to have an object of the obsession, so it could be a whale or it could be anything. It has to be a noun, or a verb, I guess. But
yeah.
So, did everybody else bail? Because my stuff's glitching out, so I didn't really see. Was I boring him?
No, I was on another screen, and the other two guys left, and I don't know why, and that's okay with me, and I'm not going to make any assumptions. They'll tell me later.
I didn't know if I scared them off with my big brain.
Yes, you're probably terrible. That's probably it. Yeah. Or they have lives. It could be just that they have lives.
Yeah. I just saw because you started open room and there was nobody in, and I've been itching to get on this topic one-on-one with you for a while. And so
let's say, for instance, that I had no resolution to what you're pointing out, right? Mm-hmm. Would I still be unjustified in saying, well, the rest of it makes sense and that comports with reality and all that stuff works together and I'm still going to believe it even though I can't justify that part? Or do you think that's unreasonable?
It throws some shade on your epistemological standard. Like, why that part and not this part is the first question that comes to my mind.
Right. But then that sounds like a dichotomy of 50-50 when I think it isn't.
Well, I would just want to know why the wine isn't standard, but the waters is.
It probably is, and I'm looking at it wrong.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's what I would think.
If it's all a word substitution puzzle, these are all. The way you're approaching it is a highly logical logic puzzle. It's a word game. It's a word puzzle, and that's what I really get down on myself. I love that kind of stuff. Yeah. And you're right. If you don't have a word that a notion that fits all the way across the board, it's time to look for another notion. But my thing to you is what if it was never intended to be that type of word problem in the first place? You're going to be chasing your tail for the rest of your life.
You make a good point. You do. And again, I would say, and this almost sounds like an escape at this point, but I still hold it's true, and I've said it out of this context of this conversation several times. This book's for Jesus, and he better get it.
So faith is the answer.
No, ignorance is acceptable in everyone but Christ.
No, faith.
He needs to get it.
Faith is why you will stick to this interpretation method.
Faith is why I stick to the interpretation method. If I found something better, I'd adopt it.
Mm-hmm. I mean that there is a secret hidden code running throughout the whole thing in the first place.
I think there is, yeah.
But that is based on faith, is what I'm saying.
Is that based on faith? Is that based on faith? Man, these things are. I like your brain. It's tough. You got a tough brain. Um, is it based on faith that these things should? Yes, until the first sign of end times. It's based on faith.
And that's when the evidence comes to validate the faith.
Then it'll be physical evidence, and after that, what we thought before won't much matter.
But wouldn't we also look to the Gospels and say Jesus thought that the end times were going to happen in his own generation?
It does happen in his generation. He says so in no uncertain terms. All of end times, including the end of the earth, happens in Christ's generation and lifetime. Yes.
But then you don't believe that the story of Jesus is a first century Middle Eastern Jewish rabbi walking around?
Absolutely not. I see no hard evidence to support that, and the Bible defeats it in its description of the life of Christ and the simultaneous description of the two witnesses of end times, that being a singular life.
That makes a lot more sense now. So you don't see him as a historical figure, you see him as a prophetic figure.
Yeah, it's prophetic to this earth. And there's been multiple earths, and yeah, it happened before, and you can write... You ever notice the whole book of Revelation is written past tense? It already happened.
Mm-hmm.
But we're still here talking about it, so it didn't happen here. That's evident. We can definitely say it ain't happened here.
But where did the gift from prophecy come from, if not for supernatural means, is what I'm trying to get at.
Angels have done this repeatedly. They are not surprised when we send exactly 5,000 nuclear warheads toward heaven. They're not surprised.
So you're relying more on the circular time model, kind of. So angels
I'm completely dependent on it.
That makes sense logically. I'm not going to actually get down on that. That just it amazes me. So you don't think there's ever a point of total destruction? Then?
What do you mean? Total destruction of Homo sapien in the universe? No. Total destruction of the planet? Well, all but total destruction. It becomes completely liquefied. And whether they have to pour a bunch of juice into it or not, it's kind of irrelevant. They say they're going to liquefy the whole planet. In fact, it's even in the text that they're going to remove from this planet at that time. They're going to remove 7 mountains, mountain worth, whatever a mountain worth is, of the metals. And it lists the metals they're going to remove out of the planet. Like I can recite the metals to you. Could
those be symbolic representative interpretations?
Well, when it says things like remove the oceans and smoke rising up, but then even the removal of the atmosphere and then the removal of these metals, I think it's literal. They're going to take their crap back. Which the beginning of the story is them putting the stuff here. And the end of the story is taking it back.
Have you ever spoke to End Time Teacher? I saw you popped up in the chat earlier, and it sounded like you guys have.
We did. Okay, I was told there would be a debate. I was told that he's a serious student of the Bible. By the way, you're a lot more serious than this guy. I mean, you know what you're talking about, and you're not all over the place and making just wild assertions with no context.
Thanks.
So I'm trying to get people to debate me on these topics for a favor for a friend who calls himself, oh, there he is, Certainty Exists, JG, and there he speak of the JG and he'll appear. So we're trying to have, and we've had 2 people invited onto JG's channel for me to debate, but I don't think they were debates. In fact, they weren't even conversations. Because, if you can insult me like between 1 and 20 times before I lose my mind, but if you just keep making insulting assertions and assuming things and strawmanning my position, eventually I'm going to think you're dishonest. Then I'm going to call you dishonest. And then if you freak out even more because I called you dishonest, my patience for you is gone. I just got no more patience.
So I know about ETT's character. I wasn't really kind of getting on that. But he does actually posit something that interested me quite a bit, is he believes in the alien rapture.
Okay. What does that mean?
The alien rapture, imagine Independence Day. You seen that movie?
Sure.
Where a bunch of alien ships just show up. But symbolically representing Noah's Ark And so all these aliens are saying, shit's about to hit the fan, humanity. We're here to rescue whoever will get on the ark. And like,
Okay.
so then you can imagine the choices that are going to have to be made amongst all humanity. Like, get on board an alien spaceship with people that may anal probe you, or they're actually your ticket to escaping a certain doom. And so,
Right.
when I was a believer, I used to think that was a possible scenario, that the angels were typologically aliens, but God would send them, because it says by Jesus, as in the days of Noah, and you can't have the days of Noah without the big ark story.
That's right.
If you're having a rapture kind of ideology, then that makes sense. Like, and then that would be like mixing some Star Trek, and then you got the people floating up into the sky too.
But not so much, actually, BS. If you consider the book of Revelation, chapter 7, verses 9 through 15, it says angels uncountable. Well, it can't mean us, because we're not uncountable. We know how many of us there have been and are. We know that. So it says angels uncountable live with God and praise him night and day, etc. Right? And they are dressed in white, living with God. And how did they get that way? They went through the great day of the Lord, or end times, and they washed their clothes, or made them white, or made them large, in the blood of the Lamb. But I only know of one kind of critter that goes through end times accepting Christ. That's a man.
Yeah,
so it's directly saying angels are men of an earth. And that earth went through end times.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of rapture and what's the word for end times stuff? I forgot the technical term right off the top of my head. Eschatology. Yeah. And so there's, it's pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib, no-trib, blah, blah, blah,
all
blah.
Those ideas, yeah. But overall, it's saying angels have flesh in heaven. They come here, which scares the crap out of us, right? And it would. If those kinds of numbers of beings showed up on the planets, and yes, there's a conversion factor and a hard measurement in the Bible. So I can conclusively say the New Jerusalem is 1,500 miles across, that it's shaped as a globe, it's a spherical thing, that it's brilliant red or magenta in color. I mean, it describes them. So if you had 29 objects that were spherical in shape, piercing the atmosphere, and they were about the size of halfway across the United States, and they were evenly spaced, there's nowhere you could stand on the earth where you couldn't see one. You would be able to see one from every vantage point.
Yeah, I'm not getting hung up on the specifics. That's why I use Independence Day as an example, because they just sent massive ships and everybody saw the ships.
That brings me to my point. Yes, they're aliens. Yes, it'll scare us. But when they reveal to themselves to us, it turns out they're humans.
Okay, and so here's the crux of why I brought End Time Teacher up, is that I had this thought, found another person that had this thought, but his thought process is get on the ship, while my thought process, when I was a believer, I was like, no, this is a Illuminati, the fallen angels, like this, all the bad stuff. So I was like, don't get on the ship. Could be. Yeah.
Well, and actually, if you include the rest of the story, Satan and his kind appear the same way. Mm-hmm. And that's the argument, is which is the right heaven. Of course, you see in the Old Testament the constant argument, which is the right heaven, which is the right God. That's why that argument exists.
Yeah. So would you get on the ship, or would you stay off the ship?
Well, that's why he describes the ships.
No, you personally.
I know that the red spherical ships are our kind of being, Homo sapien sapien. I'll be getting on that ship.
Okay. And if it's any other ship, don't get on the ship.
Don't get on the ship.
Okay, it's good to know.
By the way, I can't show this, but I have suspicions that on the not human ships is a relief on the underbelly of it, on the underside, a hollow that I very much suspect is pyramid shaped.
Getting into the Egyptian.
I think well, not just Egypt, but I think the pyramids are emergency landing pads. That's what I think they are.
Made out of brick.
It'd be a good thing to make it. You have angles, so you have no hard impact. It's self-centering because it's sloped on all four sides. It's actually self-squaring in the other direction, in the twist direction, because there's four flats and corners. I mean, it would make a really good crash landing pad.
Yeah, I just probably poisoned by a sci-fi thing just to expect metal all the time or some kind of unknown substance.
I don't think that would be convenient or smart, and then we'd have a lot of questions like, how the hell did this alloy get here?
Yeah. Well, I think unless you have any other questions for me, this has been a good talk. You've pretty much touched on.
I appreciate your time.
Stuff. Yeah, stuff I'd like to talk about with you. So
you have been disagreeing with me. You have been holding a completely different position from me. You have been polite. You have been forgiving. You have been intelligent, understandable, and you didn't freak out at any point. And you know what? I can say the same things about myself. And thank you for the conversation.
I appreciate it. I'll see you around, Rich.
Have peace. You see, we don't have to be jerks to each other. It's not a certainty. And you're not better than someone else because you're mean to them, Christians. Those things just aren't true. You're not better because you're an asshole. In fact, I'd say you're worse because you're an asshole. Sorry, that was really rough language for me, but I want to turn people to Christ, thereby I'll be an idiot? I mean, what part of that makes sense? Do you really think that you help encourage adults to accept your truth by being combative? No. Are you trying to force them into hell? Is that the plan? If you're trying to force them into hell, bravo, guys. You Christians are doing an amazing job of encouraging people to not accept heaven. Because if you're telling the truth, you're representing it really poorly and turning people off with the truth. So that's a real jerk move, guys. Well, Kim, in that case, I'm really glad you found the channel. And I hope you come back a lot. And I hope you make your absolute best arguments. And I hope that you grow me because I want to grow. That'd be pretty cool. What are we doing, guys? One of you guys are hitting the link and coming in, or I'm shutting it down. Your choice. For now, until I hear a boop in the background, meaning someone came in. Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived, and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a mature man from Jehovah. That word mature there belongs there because there's two different kinds of men. There's like prepubescent man or pubescent man, which is not fully mature of full measure. And then there's mature man of full measure. Now, when the text used the word man, when it's not the word Adam, but is the word man, like he who exists as a mature man, when it's using it that way, it means someone who is fully grown. And by fully grown, it means fully grown in every way, like adjusted to reality, makes perfect sense in rationality, is not a child whatsoever. Peace and respect, Tommy. So there's only one claim of a mature man in the Bible, and that's Christ. Go ahead, Brother Tommy. It's all you.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you. I hope I rise to the high standards of your cordiality. Yeah.
You're able of it.
It's,
Peace and respect, Metabun and Assembly.
Tell you what, I'll accept your peace, but you hold the respect.
Well, do you know what I mean by that?
Do I?
I asked you if you know what I mean by that.
No, I don't traffic in knowledge claims about respect. Do pray tell.
Okay, so when I wish people peace and respect, that is exactly what I'm doing. I'm wishing it to them. Okay? Like I want you to have peace in your life. And I want you to have respect for yourself and others. And I feel that way about you. And I feel that I have peace. That is, unless somebody lies repeatedly and just is being a jerk, I feel really good about life in general. And I wish that for everyone, because if everyone had that, we wouldn't let people starve to death. We wouldn't hurt each other, etc.
Wow. You could solve world hunger, Richard.
Through just peace and respect, I know.
Wow. Who'd have thunk it was that simple? That's
It is.
grand.
I think 10-year-olds could solve world hunger, actually.
Well, in that case, I will receive your wish of respect. I heard that some prayers are in statement form, some prayers of faith, but anyway. Yes. How are we? Oh, by the way, I've noticed you've never offered me a free plane ticket, but I've already complained about that, hadn't I? Never mind.
If you'd like to come here, I'd offer you a free plane ticket. Do you want to come?
Really? Round trip and everything?
Yeah, okay.
Well, your generosity is astonishing, Richard. I won't take you up on it, but
You never expressed that you would need financial assistance or that you had the desire to come here.
it's true. I have not. It's true.
Are you doing it facetiously, or do you really think you'd like to come here and like maybe spend a couple days in Santa Fe?
I'd love to. That's near the Grand Canyon, isn't it? Somewhere near there?
No.
Oh. Is it near the caldera that was going to blow up 3 months ago? No.
There's no significant active volcanic caldera here. No.
Oh, okay. Or whatever it is. Yeah.
I mean, you're in the
Santa
right
Fe,
half
that
of the
sounds
United
exotic.
States for those things, but that's it. It's only the right half of. You're nowhere close to Santa Fe.
But thank you, Richard. That's gracious offer. It is.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't offer that only when someone threatens to physically kick my ass.
What, when some young fella threatens to
Some
kick
young
your
guy
butt?
was threatening to kick my ass, so I offered him money to come do it.
I see. You still sport high testosterone level, obviously, I guess.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
I'm 54, but yeah, my T level's pretty high,
Yeah.
and I'm actually in really good physical condition. Like I'm in surprisingly good I'm in better shape now than most men literally half my age. Like I'm not kidding you. Like I can still do inverted pull-ups. I can put my whole body in the air facing upside down and do a pull-up. Yeah. Or curl my body over a bar.
Oh my God! I bet that's
I can still do that without swinging. I can like lift my feet and put my body over top of a bar and be on top of it and push it down. I can still do that. Yeah.
Wow. Enviable. Yeah. Enviable, yes.
I still did lift over 300 pounds. I still squat over 600 pounds, and I can calf raise over 700 pounds. In fact, more than 800 pounds.
And you can whoop.
If I was called to, I don't want to. You know, I don't
theologians
want to.
half your age, you can whoop them. Just
Yeah, probably.
smack them down if they beg you for it.
If they want it bad enough, I'll oblige them. Now, I'm not a violent person, but if you put me in a corner or you think you're going to diminish me by insulting me and I'm going to back down, you're wrong. That's not going to work.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I'm a war vet. I'm in really good shape. I don't have any health problems. I don't take any medications. Nothing. You can ask Beck. I kick your butt, man. Not you, Tommy. You're probably like a lot stronger than me because you're a big dude.
Oh, I'm a big wuss. You know.
Are you?
Yeah, I might talk a big turkey, but I ain't that tough. No.
You're prior service too, aren't you?
I served in the Boy Scouts of America. I served.
And aside from that?
I served with some people, but I was private sector. Yes.
Okay. All right. I did that after I got out of the military. I did a little private work for the military.
Oh yeah. No wet work,
Yeah.
I trust.
No.
Good.
It was vehicle repair and maintenance and
Logistics.
materials fabrication. I did stuff like, hey, make us a Modus mount for our lookout tower. Well, lookout towers don't come with a Modus mount because they made the lookout tower in the first place out of just like steel pipe and stuff, right? So it
Is that
doesn't
like
come with a mount.
is that like a deer stand for national
Well,
adversaries or something?
yeah,
Or-
like a deer stand that holds 4 men inside of shielding, and they wanted to reach out and touch you 50 cal on there.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well,
So I did stuff like that.
I must cool down my laptop. I've got a prior engagement. But thank you for your hospitality, Richard. It's a
Thank you.
pleasure as usual.
If
Brother?
you get the time and
Brother.
inclination,
Yeah.
and I can't guarantee hotel. Okay?
Oh, that's okay. That's
Because
okay. That's,
hotels are pricey around here,
oh
man.
my God.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I'm on the no-fly list, so I may hitchhike. But anyway,
The
but
cheapest hotel here and it's a cheap hotel, is like in the high traffic season $80 a night, and in the low traffic season $60 a night. So if you ever want to spend a week and you scrape together something around $350 for the hotel, I got you for the rest of it.
thank you
Sure.
again, Richard, for that gracious offer. Thank you.
Right on.
Later, God willing.
Yeah, it's terrible, Sammy. My employer paid me just in time to not go to Math Pig's event. Somebody jumping in, am I killing this thing? I've had a great time today. I want to thank B.S. Lewis again for coming in. And yes, B.S. doesn't agree with me on these things. But it was a cordial, intelligent, progressive conversation, and good for him. Good for him. I want more of those. I do not want to fight with people where we're just making assertions, not backing up our case, and not being reasonable. That was a great conversation. Thank you so much again, BS. All right, I'm not hearing a little bing in the background, and you guys ain't coming in, which means it's fine with me that you're done as I'm done. So I thank you for your time. Peace and respect to you all. I look forward to the day that we're all great friends. Till next time.